Hello everybody, welcome back to English Building Blocks. Today we're going to talk about reported speech. Now, we can't talk about reported speech unless we talk about direct speech first. Now, direct speech means that you use the exact same words as the person who said them, okay? Furthermore, you use the quotation marks as well. For example, Jimmy said, "I am coming." So you see, we use his exact same words, "I am coming," and we also use those quotation marks, right? Now, if you refer back to those words at a later time, then you can possibly use reported speech. Now, if using reported speech, you have to modify some things. Furthermore, you don't use those quotation marks anymore. For example, Jimmy said he was coming. So you see, we have modified the subject from I into he. We also have changed the auxiliary verb from a present to a past, and we don't use the quotation marks anymore, okay? Now, how do we transform direct speech into reported speech? Let's find out. Before going any further, I'd like to make some initial observations. Firstly, we can use reported speech with or without that in the middle. You can omit it, you can use it, there is no difference. For example, Jimmy said that he was coming, or Jimmy said he was coming. Both are okay, both are correct. But if you ask me, then I prefer to omit that because it just sounds more fluent, okay? And second observation, the two most common reporting verbs are to say and to tell. However, they are a little bit different in use. Now, when using the verb to say, there is no indirect object. On the other hand, when using the verb to tell, you have to use an indirect object. For example, Jimmy said he was coming. So you see, we don't use an indirect object here, but when I say Jimmy told me he was coming, then I use an indirect object, in this case, me. Now, when using reported speech, as you may have noticed in the example, you'll have to modify certain things, okay? There will be three things that you have to take into account when using reported speech. Firstly, you'll have to modify the verb tense into the past, and this is what we call backshift. You shift or you move further back into the past when using reported speech comparing to direct speech, okay? Secondly, you may have to modify the pronouns. Now, as the perception of the person who said those words or the current speaker may be different, then you have to modify these pronouns, okay? And thirdly, when using an indefinite adverb of time or place, or you use a demonstrative, then maybe you'll have to modify those too, okay? So now let's have a look. So, when using reported speech, what we normally do is we backshift. Now, what does that mean, we backshift? This basically means that you change your verb tense into a past tense. So if using present simple in direct speech, then you have to use past simple in reported speech, okay? If you use present continuous in direct speech, then you use past continuous in reported speech. Or if you use present perfect in direct speech, then you have to use past perfect in reported speech, okay? For example, Jane told me I have eaten at home. So if we want to modify this into a reported speech, then we say, Jane told me she had eaten at home. So you see we have modified the verb tense from a present perfect to a past perfect. Okay? Another example. Jake said, I am watching TV. So again, if we want to transform this into reported speech, we say, Jake said he was watching TV. So in this case, we have modified the present continuous into a past continuous. He was watching TV. Okay? Another example. Jessica told us, I am pregnant. So in reported speech, this would be Jessica told us she was pregnant. So in this case, we have modified the present simple into a past simple. She was pregnant. Okay? So, what do we do when we use past simple or past continuous in direct speech? How do we backshift that? Well, when using past simple in direct speech, then you need to use past perfect simple in reported speech. On the other hand, when using past continuous in direct speech, then you need to use past perfect continuous. Okay? For example, Jill told me it was raining all morning. Now, in reported speech, this is Jill told me it had been raining all morning. Okay, so you see we transform our past continuous into a past perfect continuous. Had been raining. Jill told me it had been raining all morning. Okay, another example. Jack said, I lived in the UK for 10 years. Now this in reported speech is Jack said he had lived in the UK for 10 years. So you see we transform our past simple into a past perfect simple. Had lived. Jack said he had lived in the UK for 10 years. When using modal verbs, however, then you have to know what the past is of each modal verb. Okay, so the past of will is would, the past of can is could, the past of may is might, and the past of must is had to. Okay, for example, Jennifer said, you must tidy up your room. And this in reported speech is Jennifer said, I had to tidy up my room. So we see we modify must into had to in reported speech. Okay. Another example, Jacob said, I will help you. And this in reported speech is Jacob said he would help me. So you see we modify will in direct speech into would in reported speech. Okay. Another example, Josephine said, I can't come. And this in reported speech is Josephine said she couldn't come. You see we transform can into the past form could. Okay. And lastly, James told us, I may be a bit late. And this in reported speech is James told us he might be a bit late. So transforming may into the past form might in reported speech. Now, when using past perfect, simple or continuous, or you use a modal verb like could, would, should, or might, then you don't change or modify anything. You don't transform anything. Everything remains the same. Okay, so when using past perfect, simple or continuous in direct speech, you use past perfect, simple or continuous in reported speech. Okay, when using a modal verb like could, would, should, or might in direct speech, then you use the same modal verbs in reported speech. Okay, for example, Jeremiah said, I hadn't done such work before. Okay, and this in reported speech is Jeremiah said he hadn't done such work before. So as we're using past perfect simple in direct speech, we use past perfect simple in reported speech as well. Okay, Jeremiah said he hadn't done such work before. Another example, Jackson said you should study more. And this in reported speech is Jackson said we should study more. Okay, so as we're using the modal verb should in direct speech, we use the same modal verb in reported speech. Jackson said we should study more. When using present tenses, and you are 100% sure that now the situation is still the same or relevant, then you don't have to change your verb tense into the past. You don't have to backshift. You just maintain your present tense. When you're 100% sure the situation is the same or relevant and you want to give that extra emphasis, then you maintain your verb tense. Okay? For example, Jaden said, I live in London. Now, as you're 100% sure that he still lives in London, then you can say in reported speech, Jaden said he lives in London. So you see, we don't modify the verb tense, we maintain that present simple because we are 100% sure that he still lives in London now. Okay? Another example, Joseph told us, I have finished my project. Now again, as this information is relevant now, okay, you can maintain that present tense. In this case, the present perfect. Joseph said he has finished his project. Okay, so you see, we maintain the present perfect because we want to give that extra emphasis to the relevant information now. Okay. And now let's talk about these pronouns, shall we? As you have noticed, we change the pronouns when using reported speech. Not only do we change the subject and object pronouns, we also modify possessive and reflexive pronouns as well as possessive adjectives, okay? And we do so according to the perception of the speaker. Now, if the speaker is talking about a third person, then logically we use third person, singular, plural, depending on the situation, right? However, if the speaker is talking about themselves, then logically we use first person, again, singular or plural. For example, Jessica said, I will see you at your party. Now, in reported speech, this is Jessica said she would see me at my party. Okay, so let's have a look. The subject pronoun is referring to a third person, Jessica, right? So we have to modify that into third person singular, and that becomes she. Okay. On the other hand, when talking about the object, in this case the object pronoun, then we're referring to the speaker themselves. And that's why we use first person, me. And the same goes for the possessive adjective, again referring to the speaker themselves. Okay? And that's why we use my. Jessica said she would see me at my party. Okay, another example. Joel told me I cut myself while cooking. Okay, and this in reported speech is Joel told me he had cut himself while cooking. So again, let's have a look. In both cases, the subject pronoun and the reflexive pronoun is referring to a third person. And that's why in both cases we use third person singular, he and himself, referring to Joel, okay? And that's why we get Joel told me he had cut himself while cooking, okay? And now let's focus on adverbs of time, adverbs of place, and demonstratives. Now, when using an indefinite adverb of time like now, today, tomorrow, or next week, or using an indefinite adverb of place like here, then you have to be careful. Now, you will have to modify these adverbs of time or place because they are not accurate anymore. Now is not now anymore. Today is not today anymore, or here is not here anymore. Okay, so here you will find a list of these adverbs of time or place or demonstratives and how to modify them in reported speech. So you see, now in reported speech becomes then, today becomes that they, or here becomes there. Okay, there are a lot more examples as you can see. So now let's have a look at some sentences. First one. June said, I will be in LA next month. And this in reported speech is June said she would be in LA the following month. Okay, so as we're using an indefinite adverb of time, next month, in direct speech, we need to modify this, and this becomes the following month. June said she would be in LA the following month. Okay, another example. Justin said, I left this book here. And this in reported speech is Justin said he had left that book there. Okay, so we modify the demonstrative this into that, and the adverb of place here becomes there. Okay. On the other hand, if you are sure that those adverbs of time or place are still accurate, precise now, then you can maintain those time or place adverbs. Okay, for example, Jethro said, I washed my car yesterday. Now, if yesterday is still yesterday, this is still a precise adverb of time, then you can just say, Jethro said he had washed his car yesterday. So you see, we do not modify in this case the adverb of time yesterday because it is still accurate. Let's talk about questions next. Now, when using reported questions, then we divide these into two big groups. On the one hand, we have questions beginning with a question word like who, what, when, or where. And on the other hand, we have yes or no questions. Okay. Now, as a little observation, the most common reporting verb here is obviously the verb to ask. Okay. And now let's begin with question word questions. As a rule in English, when using a question word in the middle of a sentence, then what follows, what goes behind that question word has to be affirmative in construction, okay? And this is especially important when transforming present simple from our direct speech into past simple in reported speech, because we do not use an auxiliary verb. It has to be an affirmative construction, okay? So let's have a look at some examples. First one. Jet asked, what time does the film begin? Now, this in reported speech is Jet asked what time the film began. So, firstly, you see that we have modified our present simple into a past simple in reported speech. But as we're using here a question word, what follows has to be affirmative in construction, and that's why we use first the subject, the film, and then the principal verb began, okay? Jet asked what time the film began. Second example, Jade asked me, where did you live before? In reported speech, this is Jade asked me where I had lived before. So here we transform past simple into past perfect in reported speech. But again, as we're using a question word where, we need to use an affirmative construction. I had lived. Subject, auxiliary verb, principal verb. Okay, and that's how you get in reported speech, Jade asked where I had lived before. Okay, and last example, Julia asked, who are you talking to? And this in reported speech is Julia asked who I was talking to. So again, we transform our present continuous into a past continuous in reported speech. But again, as we're using a question word who in this case, what follows is affirmative in construction. I was talking. Subject, auxiliary verb, principal verb. Julia asked who I was talking to. On the other hand, when asking a yes or no question, there is obviously no question word. So what do we do in a reported question when it is a yes or no question? Well, basically in such case, we use the connector if or whether. You can choose freely, although if is the more common one. They have both the same use and meaning. Okay, now again, when using this reported question, what follows after the connector, in this case if or whether, has to be affirmative in construction. Okay, so again, be very careful when transforming a present simple into a past simple in reported speech, okay, because you only use the principal verb. There is no auxiliary verb, okay? For example, Josie asked, do you like your job? And this in reported speech is Josie asked if I liked my job. So firstly, you see, as this is a yes or no question, I use the connector if, okay? And secondly, I've transformed the present simple into a past simple, but in reported speech, I use an affirmative construction. I liked, okay? Josie asked me if I liked my job, okay? Another example. Jude asked, are you going to the party? Okay, and this in reported speech is Jude asked whether we were going to the party. So in this case, as it is a yes or no question, I've chosen to use whether. You could easily use if, both are okay, okay? And secondly, we have transformed the present continuous into a past continuous, but using an affirmative construction. Jude asked whether we were going to the party. Now, in case of an order or a request, then in reported speech we use the infinitive with to, okay? For example, Jay said, sit next to me. So as we're using here an imperative, giving some kind of order, then in reported speech we need to use the infinitive with to. Jay said to sit next to him. Okay, so we have modified the imperative into an infinitive with to. Jay said to sit next to him. And the same goes when talking about a request. For example, Jasper asked me, could you help me out? Now, as this is a request, then in reported speech, I need to use the infinitive with to. And it goes, Jasper asked me to help him out. Okay, so as this is a request, I use the infinitive with to. Okay, and remember, if you like these videos, please subscribe. Okay, and now let's continue. And now let's do some exercises. So I will give you a sentence in direct speech which you have to transform into reported speech, okay? I will give you a little bit of time to think, or if you want, you just pause the video, okay? Now, first exercise. She asked, what time does your match begin? So if you want to, you can pause the video now. Okay, and the correct answer is she asked what time my match began. Okay, so let's have a look. Firstly, we see that in direct speech we use present simple, so we need to modify that into a past simple. Furthermore, we see this is a reported question using a question word, in this case what, so what follows has to be affirmative in construction, okay, using first the subject, my match, and then the principal verb, began, okay. Furthermore, we also have a possessive adjective, and in this case, as it's referring to the speaker themselves, we use first person, okay. She asked what time my match began. Sentence number 2. He said, I have changed my t-shirt. So again, if you want, you can pause the video. And the correct answer is in reported speech, he said he had changed his t-shirt. So firstly, you see we have modified the present perfect into a past perfect. He had changed, okay? And secondly, you notice that from a speaker's point of view, he's talking about a third person. So the possessive pronoun and the subject for that matter is changed into a third person singular. He said he had changed his t-shirt, okay? Exercise number 3. She said, wait 5 minutes. Now, if you want, again, you can pause the video. And the correct answer is she said to wait 5 minutes. So as we're using here an imperative giving some kind of order in direct speech, and in reported speech, we need to use the infinitive with to. She said to wait 5 minutes. Sentence number 4. He said, you must believe me. So if you want, you can pause the video. And the correct answer is in reported speech, he said, I had to believe him. So firstly, as you have noticed, we use the modal verb must in direct speech, and we transform this into had to in reported speech, okay? Furthermore, the subject of the sentence is referring to the speaker themselves, and that's why I use the first person singular, I. On the other hand, we also have the object pronoun referring to a third person, and that's why we use him, okay? He said, I had to believe him. Sentence number 5. She said, I might finish today.
So if you want, you can pause the video. And the correct answer is, she said she might finish that day. Okay, so you notice we use the modal verb might and we do not change that. That remains the same in reported speech. Okay. Secondly, the speaker is talking about a third person, so we modify the subject pronoun into she. Okay. And lastly, we use an indefinite adverb of time, which is today, and this is transformed into that day. And that's how you get, she said she might finish that day. And sentence number 6, he asked, are you going to wait here? So again, if you want, you can pause the video. And the correct answer is, in reported speech, he asked if I was going to wait there. So firstly, as this is a yes or no question, I use the connector if. I could easily use the connector whether without a difference in meaning. Secondly, I have transformed the present continuous into a past continuous, yes, but additionally, I have also used an affirmative construction, okay? And lastly, as I have used an indefinite adverb of place here, I've transformed that into the adverb of place there, okay? He asked if I was going to wait there, okay? And that's it for today. I hope you have enjoyed this video, and if so, subscribe, okay? Leave a comment down below, click the notification bell, or just give a thumbs up, okay? Again, thank you for watching. Till next time, bye bye.